Would you ask a man out on a date? I guess maybe we start, even should you?
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. Welcoming back Sandy Weiner, the dating coach, relationship expert, and the author of Love at Last, True Stories of Falling in Love Later in Life. Sandy, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, Silka.
Well, I love the book that you just came out with because again, it reinforces finding love later in life. But to do so, there's certain things have to happen. We have to meet, we have to connect. And one of the things is to take risks, to put yourself out there. Would you ask a man out on a date? I guess maybe we start, even should you?
Yes. So many women, especially women who are of a certain age, have grown
Mhm.
up with that idea that men chase and women have to be passive. And we're not passive in the rest of
Mhm.
our lives. And I'm such a big proponent for women making first moves. I know you've talked about it on other segments. When I work with a woman, I have them make first moves in online dating, like always message first. Like don't
Mhm.
just sit and wait.
Yeah,
So when it comes to real life, because a lot of people don't want to be online dating or
right.
want to have offline dating as
Mhm.
an addition to another tool to be able to meet people, you're meeting people all the time. You see that cute person in the gym, you see that person at a club, you see that person in line at a grocery store. Ask them out. But how? It could be really vulnerable and scary.
Yeah, exactly. That's what men have gone through, all these years. So what we want to talk about today is actually making that first move and asking a man out. How do we do that? You say here, number one, use a direct but playful approach. Talk to me about that.
I mean, this is if you've already been talking and you got to know this person. It's not like, hi, you want to go out for coffee? It's so you've had a few conversations or you've seen each other at certain events and you're starting to talk and you can just say something like, hey, I found this really great ice cream spot in South Norwalk. You want to join me and try out their pumpkin ice
Mm-hmm.
cream on Sunday? I'll be there. And a lot of times, also just saying, I'll be there, you want to come and meet me there is
Mm-hmm.
also a great approach because you're going to go out and have your life
Mm-hmm.
anyway and try
Mm-hmm.
out that pumpkin ice cream. So it's not a high risk, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a fun outing. It's not necessarily a date. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times it can feel like less pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're at the ice cream place, hopefully you can see if there is a romantic connection and take it from there, but like a step at a time.
You brought up a good point, which is there's really two scenario. Well, it's probably more than two, but two primary ones. One is you've already been interacting with someone who you'd really like to go out with, but he hasn't asked you out. So how do you do that? And then the other is you see someone across the room or wherever that you literally need to approach cold, like men have had to do in various situations, like in the bar scene, when we were out dating when we were younger. It takes, different strategies. And one of them here is the in the area strategy. I love that. I've actually used that.
Oh, yeah? How did you use it?
I'd be in the area. No,
In the
this is
area.
when I was traveling back and forth from Texas to here when I was after my divorce. And yeah, I used that several times.
So a lot of times, and you bring up a good point about people traveling. So I know somebody who's in real estate and he sometimes travels for his job and he's in a different location. So he might say, that she might say, if it was a woman, I'm going to be, I have a house to show in your area. And if you're free, do you want to grab a quick cup of coffee? Right. So you're going to be there anyway. You're
Mhm.
again, it's like I'm living this life. I'm traveling through your area and it feels more casual, spontaneous. It gives the impression it's not such a big deal if they say
Mhm.
no, because you're doing it anyway. You're going to be there.
That to me, that's pretty easy, and again, of course, you already have to be in a situation where that makes sense. A third option is this interesting, the group date option. I also did that with
Oh,
my girlfriend, so I can really relate to this because, and I'll give one other example, which is what I can't relate to, and we'll get to that in a minute. It's just like, oh, hey, you want to go out sometime? I would never do that. And that's one thing eHarmony was recommending. But let's talk about the
mm.
group date option here first. Asking him to join you with, hey, my friends and I are going to be here. How does that work?
So it can feel like low risk to and
Mm-hmm.
less scary to just say, would you like to join? Some friends and I are going to a concert, or we're going to play tennis, pickleball, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome to join us. So that can be again, a low stress, low risk, but it also can be a risk in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that it's not so romantic to be in a group,
Mm-hmm.
and he might fall for one of your friends. So, um, when I ran this by my son, he was like, "No, don't do group things. That's like guys don't want to be joining your group of female friends." So
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear from the men out there about that. But I do want to say that these aren't only for people who have met in person. You can do this with somebody you've been connecting with online too. You
Mm-hmm.
could have been talking to somebody for a while and they haven't asked you out, and you're going to be in their area, or you're going to be getting together for pickleball and you want to finally meet them. It might
Mm-hmm.
be a good way. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
ask him to bring a few friends, and
Mm-hmm.
so it can be lower risk. It is scary to directly ask somebody out when you haven't had enough interaction. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem. But even like, let's say you're talking on the phone to somebody for the first time, at the end of it, you could say, "Hey, you seem really great. Would you
Mm-hmm.
like to get together sometime?" I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I recommend women do. Because if you don't say that, they don't know. They just think, "Well, you said this was really nice. I'm not sure if you meant that you really want to see me, that you just enjoyed the conversation." So you have to
Mm-hmm.
be a little more assertive in that area too.
Yeah, and then you're opening yourself up to, well, to rejection more directly than in these other options. But that's part of doing this. That's part of the risk of finding love later. And really, when you think about it, what's the worst thing that can happen? You get a no. There's one other point that I was looking on eHarmony. They had some tips there, but they said that nobody likes to be cornered, that you should always leave room for a no, that somebody can gracefully say no.
I think I wouldn't say it that way. I would say be prepared for a no, because
Mm-hmm.
every request is not a
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed yes.
Mm-hmm.
So let it go with grace. Like really
Mm-hmm.
be gracious about it. Don't be defensive. Don't just shut down and look like you've been defeated. I mean, you tried something. You threw spaghetti at the wall. You wanted to see if it stuck, So it's like, no worries, maybe some other time. And then walk away. I mean, do it
Mm-hmm.
with dignity. It's those people, if you think about online dating, when somebody says no, like if you've ever said no to somebody and then they argued with you and told you why you were a terrible person and
Mm-hmm.
you had no right to say no, that's what you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. And I guess if you are in person and getting a no, then I mean that must have been horrible for men, because some women are really rude about that. Here was another couple of things that they were saying, which I thought was just really funny. Said like open, like maybe with a cheesy line. Like I could see myself doing this. I really could. Going up to somebody goes, hey, do you come here often? But it has to be done in a way where it's that joke, that this is what a man would have said, to where you both laugh and then see if there's any sort of connection.
Look, if you're comfortable with that, great. It just so happens you're a beautiful woman. So if you said that to a man, he probably wouldn't care what you said. You came over and you talked to him. I think, along the same lines, if you're meeting somebody in person for the first time, give them a compliment. Not an over the top compliment, but I couldn't help but notice that really cool blazer you have on. It
Mm-hmm.
goes really well with your eyes, or you seem like a really fun person. Or if you been watching somebody at the gym and you smile. I mean, smiling is just huge. If you're
Right.
warm, you have a warm smile, you're going to start attracting people and they're going to
Hmm.
feel that they can come over and talk to
Hmm.
you. Don't be afraid. I mean, if you think about, and men, I feel for men because they've been asking women out, making first moves, making the first kiss, the first sex, the proposals, the
Yeah.
all the things that they initiate that they also get turned down from. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of rejection. And so, I mean, rejection is a topic that I talk about a lot because it's important to know how to navigate that because
Hmm.
most of it has nothing to do with you. And it's
Hmm.
just could be a bad time. It could be just not a good fit. That doesn't mean you don't have self-worth. So you're just throwing it out there because you miss all the chances you don't take.
Absolutely. And again, in this environment today, with the sexual harassment and all this other stuff, it's so important that the woman take the first move, or at least make it very, very clear that you're approachable. Here's something I want to ask you about. What about texting? If you want to ask somebody out and you really don't want to do it in person, because that way the guy has a chance to craft a response or a no, or without being right there on the spot. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great alternative. It's lower risk. The problem with texting for
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's anxious is you're waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're waiting for a long time, and then you start making up a story. And so by the time somebody gets back to you, you may have already made up that story that the answer is no, and that if they cared, they would have written right back and they would have been so flattered and blah, blah, blah. So you might like respond really poorly to the
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So just check yourself and make sure that you're okay with a text that might not get answered for several hours or maybe a day.
That's a great point. That's a great point. You're not on the spot. You're not right there, but the wait can be excruciating, especially if you're
Mhm.
nervous. I mean, this conversation really does it makes you feel for men and what they have gone through all this time, and they're not allowed. Like, we're talking about it kind of silly, and they don't have buddies that they talk to like that. Not at least in a vulnerable sense. So yeah, very little support for all the rejection.
So, because men have been rejected so much,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them have shut down at this point and are afraid
Mm-hmm.
to take risks, it's all the more reason why women should be making first moves. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's definitely a correlation, especially at this stage in life. And most men are really flattered when a woman asks them out,
Mm-hmm.
not turned off, not think you're some kind of aggressive, obnoxious, whatever you might think.
Mm-hmm.
It's flattering. You've chosen them and you want to get to know them. That's a really
Mm-hmm.
nice thing. You're not
Mm-hmm.
asking them to marry you. You're asking them for coffee, ice cream, pickleball, whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
it's a low risk thing. It's just a connection point.
There's another question that pops in my head then is, this was also from another segment. I forgot, was some other date. It was an article, but it was a tip that I questioned. And that was that, yeah, it's great for a woman, to ask a man out, and that most men will tell you, absolutely, I love it when women ask me out. But the point was, and this was written by a man, was that ultimately, though, the men won't respect a woman if she made the first move. And I thought it was
Wow.
horrible advice.
I do.
How do you,
Oof.
yeah, but how do you shut that down?
I think that's a man with an ego issue, honestly. I think
Yeah.
that it really depends on how a woman does it too. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, so much of what we do out there in dating and relationships has to do with our tone of voice. It
Mm-hmm.
has to do with how aggressive we are. I think a lot of men want to believe it was their choice, right? That it was their idea. Like a lot of times when you want to win an argument with a man, a lot of women will say, we make him think that it was his idea. Um, so maybe some men need to think it was their idea. So you just kind of open the door and give them the green light and let them say, oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. I would love to see you. But I'm not into games. I think that at this stage, just getting to know people is the key.
And yeah, and opening up and giving the green light. And like I said, I like these tips because they're doable. This is all doable and it's low risk. It's not like that one, I think I mentioned that earlier on, but eHarmony had said is that, just ask, just go up, hey, would you like to go out sometime? I'm surprised that was on a dating site. I mean, they must know that that is such an uncomfortable question. No, I shouldn't say no woman would do that, but that's not something I recommend. Sandy,
No.
any other tips? Something I didn't ask, something you want to add here on asking men out?
Just take risks, get out there, connect with people. I mean, you do miss all the chances you don't take. And so many people have regrets. I remember situations where I really wanted to ask somebody out and I missed an opportunity. And I thought about it for such a long time. I
Mm-hmm,
never shared my name, I never got his name, but we had a great conversation. And you think, oh man, that was really special.
mm-hmm.
And so take that chance, exchange information, just get to know somebody. What's the worst that could happen? The person says no, and then you move on.
Exactly. Sandy, thank you so much. As usual, I will link to all of your information. If you need some, extra little push here with asking a man out, call Sandy. She has some great advice in that department. And then, of course, pick up her books, Choice Points in Dating. It is like a manual, about a lot of the stuff that we talk about here and a lot of stuff that you do in coaching. And then for inspiration and hope, right there, get that book. It's always nice to read the success stories and maybe even gain some tips there. So, Sandy, thank you again for your time. I appreciate it. And I look forward to another conversation soon on Second Act TV.